Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Who will win? The question echoes through the dimly lit penthouse like a gunshot. Victor Newman, a man who has faced enemies, governments, and even his own family without backing down, finally shows fear. That alone stops Traci Abbott in her tracks because Victor never panics, unless the ground beneath him is already breaking. And tonight it's shattering fast. His breathing is uneven, his voice lower than usual, trembling at the edges as if each word costs him something he can't get back. Traci, who has spent her life studying how people suffer, feels it instantly. She stepped into the eye of a storm she wasn't meant to see. When Victor turns to her, his eyes are sharp but filled with pain. He doesn't threaten or lie. Instead, he confesses. And that confession hits like a knife to the chest because it changes everything she thought she knew. Not just about Victor but about the history of Genoa City itself. Victor admits that years ago, during one of Newman Enterprises' darkest secrets, he ordered something terrible. Not a corporate move, not blackmail, not even a prison setup, but the deliberate killing of someone who stood in his way. He buried the truth so deep that even he convinced himself it was just a story. But now, with Traci's compassion and her accidental closeness to the truth, that memory has come back. As Victor speaks, the walls seem to close in, and the city's noise fades into a distant roar. He reveals that the person he destroyed wasn't just an enemy, but someone connected to the Abbott family. Someone whose disappearance caused pain and unanswered questions that Traci once tried to understand. That loss shaped the woman she became. As the truth hits, Traci's heart breaks between horror and understanding. She sees it now, the missing parts in old police reports, the silence at family dinners, the way Jack once clenched his jaw when certain years were mentioned. Victor, voice breaking in a way no one has ever heard, admits he didn't just make the person disappear. He framed another man to take the blame. That man died believing himself guilty. And worse, Victor admits he's confessing now not just because of guilt, but because the truth is coming out on its own. Someone else knows. Someone is already moving pieces on the board. And Victor, the master strategist, realizes too late that he's no longer in control. Traci, shaking, asks the most important question. Why tell her? Why now? Victor answers with brutal honesty. Because she's the only one who might stop what's coming. Because if the truth comes out publicly, it will destroy not just him but Nikki, his kids, and everyone caught in the fallout. Because Jack will come for revenge. Because Ashley will burn everything down. Because the war that follows will leave no winners. And suddenly the headline "Who will win?" feels more real than ever. The situation becomes much worse because winning now means staying alive, not just winning. Traci feels a heavy choice pressing down on her. Because she isn't like Victor or Jack, who are warriors. She is a truth keeper, a storyteller, someone who believes in healing. But Victor has put the future of whole families in her hands, asking her to help him hide the damage, to help him create a version of the truth that protects the innocent. As he reaches out, showing a side of himself that's not usual, Traci pulls back. Not because she's disgusted, but because she's scared of herself. She's scared of the part of her that understands why Victor did what he did. Scared of the part of her that knows power can break even the strongest morals. She tells him that confessing doesn't mean being forgiven. That fear doesn't take away the guilt of murder. Victor responds with desperation, insisting that if she doesn't help him, someone else will twist the truth into a weapon, and then everyone loses. The room feels heavy with memories they haven't shared. Traci imagines Jack's face when he finds out the truth, imagines the betrayal tearing the Abbott family apart like rot, imagines Nikki standing by Victor, torn between love and horror, imagines Genoa City exploding with old alliances breaking and new fights starting. In that moment, Traci realizes the real horror of Victor's confession isn't the crime itself, but how long it will last. One harsh decision has spread over decades, changing lives, relationships, fates. Victor, sensing that Traci is wavering, delivers the last blow. He tells her the truth will come out soon, that the evidence has already been found, that someone is going to expose everything unless Victor meets their demands. When Traci asks who, Victor gives her a name that makes her feel cold. A name that connects both families. Someone who was always seen as weak, ignored, underestimated. Someone who found out long ago that survival sometimes means becoming the monster everyone else refuses to see. Now Traci understands this isn't about Newman versus Abbott. It's about truth versus control. And for the first time in his life, Victor is losing. As dawn slowly moves over Genoa City, painting the skyline with a cold, indifferent light, Traci walks away from Victor with the confession still echoing in her mind. She knows she can't forget it, can't run from it, can't save everyone. She knows whatever choice she makes will leave someone as the winner and others as the losers. In this war there are no clean hands, only consequences. The question is, who will win? The situation no longer feels exaggerated or distant, but deadly, urgent, and unstoppable. As Genoa City prepares for the consequences that will change its future forever. The city does not sleep after Traci Abbott leaves Victor Newman's penthouse because secrets have mass, and this one hits Genoa City like a gravitational shift, bending every relationship, every memory, every long-buried suspicion toward its center as Traci walks through the quiet streets with Victor's words clawing at her mind, realizing that knowledge is not power but burden, that truth does not liberate but demands payment, and by the time she reaches her door she already knows that the choice she makes next will define not just her future but the moral spine of two dynasties, because Victor's confession is no longer his alone, it lives in her now, festering, growing teeth, and when dawn finally breaks it brings with it the first tremor of war as Jack Abbott senses something wrong before a single word is spoken, the way a brother can feel the air change, the way decades of rivalry have trained him to recognize Newman fall out like smoke before fire. And when Traci sits across from him at breakfast, pale and distant, he knows instinctively that whatever she's carrying will either destroy Victor Newman or finally finish the Abbotts. And when she hesitates, Jack's patience fractures because he has waited his entire life for the truth to surface, waited through half-answers, sealed records, unexplained disappearances, and the quiet grief that hollowed their family from the inside, and Traci, voice shaking but steady in purpose, tells him only this, that Victor Newman has confessed to something monstrous, something irreversible, something that explains everything, and Jack's hands curl into fists not in rage but in vindication, because for him the question who will win has always had a simple answer, justice at any cost, yet Traci begs him not to move yet, not to strike, not to turn this into a public execution before they understand who else is pulling strings, because Victor wasn't lying about that, because someone else is already leveraging the truth, and as if summoned by the thought, Ashley Abbott returns to Genoa City like a storm front, her arrival sharp, purposeful, eyes blazing with suspicion, because Ashley has learned never to trust timing, and this timing reeks of blood, and when she learns that Traci knows something she doesn't, the fracture between sisters deepens into fury, because secrets have always been weapons in this family, and Traci finds herself isolated on all sides, Victor pressing her to help him contain the blast, Jack demanding she unleash it, Ashley determined to weaponize it first, and meanwhile at the Newman ranch Nikki senses Victor slipping away, not physically but morally, because she has loved him long enough to recognize when his confidence curdles into fear, and when she confronts him, Victor finally admits that the walls are closing in, that the truth will surface whether they like it or not, and Nikki, torn between loyalty and conscience, realizes with dawning horror that this time she may not be able to stand beside him, because this crime is not abstract, not business, not survival, it is blood, and across town the shadow player steps forward. The one Victor named but underestimated, the one who learned patience in the margins, who watched titans destroy lives while believing themselves untouchable, and this person, armed with evidence and rage sharpened by years of neglect, makes their move by leaking just enough information to the authorities to ignite an investigation without revealing the full truth, because chaos is more useful than closure, because watching Victor Newman unravel publicly is not enough. They want him to choose who burns with him. And as subpoenas begin to circulate and whispers ripple through corporate boardrooms and family living rooms alike, Genoa City enters a state of suspended breath, alliances recalibrating in real time, lawyers circling like carrion birds, and through it all Traci stands at the center, her phone vibrating constantly with demands, threats, pleas and ultimatums, until she realizes the truth no one else has grasped yet, that Victor's greatest mistake wasn't the crime. It was believing control could outlive truth, and when she confronts him one last time, she doesn't offer absolution or protection but clarity, telling him that she will not help him lie, will not help him rewrite history, but she will help him face it, and Victor, finally stripped of bravado, finally just a man staring down the consequences of his own mythology, asks her if that means he loses everything, and Traci answers with brutal honesty, yes, but losing everything may be the only way anyone wins. And as sirens echo faintly in the distance, and news alerts begin lighting up screens across the city, Victor Newman understands at last that the game he mastered has changed, that this is no longer about power but reckoning, and as Jack prepares to go to war, Ashley sharpens her strategy, Nikki braces for impact, and the shadow player smiles from the sidelines. The question who will win transforms once more, no longer about Newman versus Abbott, but about whether truth can survive a world built on secrets. And as Genoa City hurtles toward exposure, betrayal, and irreversible loss, one thing becomes terrifyingly clear. No matter who wins, no one will emerge unscathed. The courtroom is already vibrating with tension before the first gavel strikes, because this is not just a trial. It is a reckoning staged in public light, a theater of consequence where secrets that once ruled from shadows are about to be dragged screaming into record. And as Victor Newman enters flanked by attorneys whose confidence cannot mask the dread in their eyes, every camera in the gallery snaps to life like predators sensing blood. While across the aisle Jack Abbott stands rigid fury, disciplined into stillness, Ashley seated beside him with eyes sharp enough to cut glass, and Traci between them, pale but resolute, knowing she has crossed the threshold from witness to catalyst, knowing there is no return. And when the judge calls the room to order, the silence is suffocating because everyone understands that whatever happens here will not end with a verdict, it will end with a rewriting of history, and the prosecution wastes no time, laying out a narrative so damning it feels unreal: corporate espionage, obstruction of justice, falsified records, and at its heart the deliberate disappearance of a man whose only crime was knowing too much, a man whose name echoes through the courtroom like a ghost finally acknowledged. And as exhibits flash across screens, bank transfers disguised as acquisitions, security footage altered by expert hands, medical records sealed then destroyed, Victor's face hardens not with defiance but with something far more dangerous: recognition. Because every piece of evidence confirms what he feared, that the truth did not merely survive him, it outgrew him. And when the prosecution calls its first surprise witness, the room fractures audibly, because it is Nikki Newman who takes the stand, her decision to testify detonating like a bomb through the gallery, Victor's head snapping up in disbelief as Nikki's voice trembles through admissions of what she suspected, what she ignored, what she chose not to ask because love can be its own form of complicity, and the jury watches transfixed as the myth of the unbreakable Newman marriage splinters in real time, while Victor's attorneys scramble to contain the damage, objecting too late, because the truth is not hearsay when it comes wrapped in regret. And then the shadow player emerges from anonymity, not dramatically but methodically, introduced as a whistleblower whose years of silence were not weakness but strategy. And as they testify, the room leans forward, because this is not a victim seeking sympathy but an architect of exposure detailing how they collected fragments others discarded, how they waited until the system itself would be forced to listen, and when they reveal the final piece, the proof that Victor personally authorized the operation that erased a life, the air drains from the room because this is no longer about inference or implication but authorship, and Victor finally breaks, not shouting, not collapsing but standing abruptly, his voice cutting through protocol as he tries to reclaim the narrative, insisting he acted to protect his family, his company, his legacy, and the judge pounds the gavel in furious chaos erupts, spectators shouting, reporters typing furiously, Jack rising to his feet with decades of restrained rage boiling over as he screams that Victor stole years, stole truth, stole blood, and Ashley follows with surgical cruelty, listing every time the Abbotts were dismissed as paranoid, every door slammed in their faces. While Victor smiled and played king, and through it all Traci watches Victor unravel and feels no triumph, only devastation, because this is what truth looks like when it finally breaks containment. It destroys indiscriminately. And when Traci herself is called to the stand, the room stills again, because this is the moral center everyone has been orbiting, and her testimony is quiet but lethal as she explains how Victor confessed not out of remorse but fear, how even then he tried to shape outcomes, how power trained him to believe consequences were negotiable, and the jury sees it clearly now, the anatomy of control laid bare by someone who refused to wield it. And when cross-examination comes, Victor's defense attempts to paint Traci as conflicted, biased, emotionally compromised, but she dismantles them with one sentence that lands harder than any accusation, that loving someone does not obligate you to protect the harm they cause. And Victor flinches as if struck, because in That moment he realizes he has truly lost her, lost the last witness who might have softened his fall, and as closing arguments begin, the courtroom feels like a pressure chamber, the prosecution demanding accountability, the defense pleading legacy, warning of collateral damage if a titan falls, but the jury has already seen too much, heard too much, and when the verdict is read, the words ripple outward like a shockwave. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Each count stripping away another layer of the legend until Victor Newman is no longer a mythic force but a convicted man standing alone. And Nikki weeps openly. Jack exhales decades of tension in one shattered breath. Ashley nods once as if confirming a hypothesis long proven. And Traci closes her eyes, not in relief but mourning, because victory tastes like ash when it costs this much. And as Victor is led away, he turns back one final time, not to glare or threaten but to ask with his eyes the question that has haunted everything: who will win? And no one answers because the courtroom has already delivered the truth. There are no winners here, only survivors, and as Genoa City absorbs the fallout, empires destabilized, families redefined, history rewritten, the silence Victor leaves behind is louder than any power he ever wielded. A warning etched into the city's bones that control can delay reckoning but never defeat it.